A ring is a ring, but not all championships are created equal. And in a few decades, we'll sit down with our kids and they'll talk about how many titles each guy has, and the context will be lost. Every year, it feels like we have a final series, guys get hurt, it's a wacky playoffs. And so we really wanted to dig into this idea that different championships have different weights. And if you were lining up all of these Larry OBs in a trophy case, that there would be some sort of order, like a raising the bar,
A hierarchy.
a hierarchy. And one thing we really didn't want to do is relitigate LeBron's decision. So we'll leave that up to the viewers. We decided to go back to 2014 and say, from 2014 to 2021, how do you rank the quote unquote weights of these titles? And obviously we needed some criteria. What I was saying to Max earlier is I kind of think of it as like net degree of difficulty is what I was calling it. Meaning so strength of schedule, keeping in mind how good your team is. We also have to subtract a ring chaser tax because it just isn't quite the same. Still a title, but when a superstar goes out of his way to team up with other superstars in an unnatural, in an inorganic fashion, we gave them a little bit of a ring chaser tax. Now I'm sure Max and I will have different interpretations of these criteria, but that was the homework assignment. Yeah.
A lot of fun going back through the old playoff rounds and remembering some things that I'd forgotten. Some, I think, forgotten teams that will probably be lost to history because they didn't win the finals or even make the conference finals.
But they're a part of the story.
They're part of the story. So yeah, let's get into it. Do you want to go back to front or front to back?
We got to go back to front. But I also was just starting to feel really old, thinking like, the way Simmons talks about the 86 Celtics, like these are our years. These are the years we're going to feel like we know best. So it's fun. It's fun to go back and think about 2014 to 2021.
Yes.
Just tell me this. Do we agree that the lightest trophies in the last 8 years are Golden State 17 and 18?
Yeah.
Okay.
No doubt.
Do you care about a specific order of those two, or are they interchangeable?
Yes, I put 17 above 18 just because of the dominance of 17.
Yeah.
And you have to, give a little respect to the fact that it might be the best team we've ever seen. And the fact that it was kind of a disappointment that they didn't go 16-0 in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like, it would have been really nice if they went 16-0 in the playoffs just for history's sake, and just to sort of cement them as the best team of all time.
Yeah.
But they kind of let their foot off the gas in one of the Cavs games, whatever. But in 18, I think it was disappointing how many games they lost along the way.
Yep. However, I agree with you. In my rankings, I put 2017 Warriors in the 7 spot.
Yeah.
2018 Warriors in the 8 spot. The 2017 Warriors went Blazers sweep, Utah sweep, Spurs sweep, and then like you said, a 5-game finals victory over the Cavs.
Yeah. The only argument for 2018 being higher is that the Rockets were the best team they played. But I also don't think that should have gone 7. Like, they were a much better team than the Rockets. I think the Rockets were built to try to stop them. And I think it's admirable how close they got, but I don't think that should have been a 7-game series. Honestly, the finals could have been 5 if there wasn't the J.R. Smith game, and that Cavs team was not very good. So I think degree of difficulty wise, neither of those were that hard. Heavy ring chaser tax, though we don't have to litigate that.
Yeah. Ring chaser tax really docked both these Warriors teams. Sorry, KD. I know you're listening.
David West.
Like you said, it's difficult. Is it an argument for or against the 2018 the 2018 Warriors that they ran into a Houston team that I do think was championship caliber? I really do believe. And you have the 0 for 27 debacle, horribly devastating. Trevor Ariza, PJ Tucker, Covington, none of them can hit a shot.
Tucker was actually 2 of 4 in that game, I think.
That was an amazing series to watch. CP doesn't get hurt. The Rockets might actually pull that one out. and we don't even get to rank the 2018 Warriors. But I agree with you. 17 was so incredibly dominant and so angeringly fun to watch that they deserve to not be in last place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get the hell away from the KD Warriors, though.
Yeah, those are 1 pound chips. We don't need those.
So number 6, who's your 6 seed? Let's get interesting.
2019 Raptors.
I do as well. Last second switch. They were almost my 5. I moved them down to 6. I'm interested to hear if you had a similar train of thought. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So the table they ran was Magic 5, that Philly team with Jimmy Butler in 7, the Bucks team, which would flame out the following year, but win the championship 2 years later. They were 1 seed that year in 6 after going down 2-0. Raptors came back, and then Warriors in 6. But of course, that was KD tears his Achilles, Klay Thompson tears his ACL. Klay Thompson also, both Klay and KD missed a couple games in that series before those injuries. So honestly, in retrospect, that Philly team with Jimmy Butler's a good team. And that Bucks team did go on to win the championship a couple years later once they got Drew Holiday. So that's a solid path. And I think that Raptors team is a worthy champion, but it's just hard when the finals was so deflating that year after all those guys got hurt.
Yeah. So like I said, I almost had them at 5. I switched it at the last second. I think Philly was a championship caliber team that year. The same way I said in 18, the Rockets were good enough. I really do believe that, I mean, the Kawhi bounce was insane. That series easily could have gone the other way. I think Philly was good enough to win a title. And then, I think, I guess it was the conference finals. The Bucks go up 2-0 and Kawhi drags his team to 4 straight wins. I called that
the adjustment as I'm guarding Giannis series.
I called that the Canadian sweep. And then, as you said, the finals was Armageddon that year. The one reason I had to drag them back down to 6, the 6 seed, this Raptors title team, was just that, like you said, I mean, we all can agree that the Warriors were extremely likely to win that finals if they had their team. So it just, even though Kawhi was transcendent, truly one of the best finals performances I've ever seen. And this
one of the best playoffs.
It was still a Warriors team that had Steph. They had talent, but it didn't feel good. It didn't feel, it wasn't a fun finals to watch after those devastating injuries to Golden State. But a really incredible run up to the finals, which brings the Raptors above the 2 KD finals MVP years.
Certainly a level up from that. If those first 2 are worth, weigh 1 pound, this is like maybe a 5 pounder.
Yep. I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think this is where things are going to get chippy for us.
I think so.
So we both had the Raptors at 6. Our bottom 3 has been the same. Yep. Who's your 5?
This is hard for me to admit because he's my favorite player in the NBA, but I had the Bucks from last year at 5.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Yeah. And I think the finals was impressive. The Suns, were probably a lower than average finals team, I'd say. They, were very fortunate to get there with the injuries to both the LA teams.
Okay.
Of course they earned it. Yeah. Sorry. We all know how that would have ended. Certainly doesn't age well with what Luka did to them this year, but
the Bucks had a historically favorable Eastern Conference Finals matchup against Atlanta.
Yeah.
Ice Tray.
Yeah. And honestly, I think this is like a median in history championship weight.
Agreed.
This is like an average championship weight, I'd say. I think the 4 above it are very heavy. But Giannis, he cemented his status as like a top player, and no one can doubt him anymore for not having a jump shot.
50 and 14 in the title clincher.
I've gone back and watched the highlights of that game like 10 times. Yeah. I just can't get enough. A number of iconic plays. The path, everyone harps on the Nets series and how the Nets would have like mopped the floor with them if they'd been healthy. I don't know if that's 100% true because Kyrie got hurt in game 4 when the Bucks were up. Like, it's not like the Nets lost game 3 with Kyrie and KD. Granted, Harden was out. If Harden was there, I agree they probably would have beaten them. But even with Kyrie, like, it still looked like the Bucks were kind of starting to figure themselves out, and they started every series that year kind of slow. So yeah, and Giannis coming back from his injury to be that dominant was really spectacular. So I'd say I'd give that like a nice medium average grade for championship weight.
Yeah. Similar page here. In the same way I give the Raptors so much credit for that second round series win over Philly in 2019. Like, I give the Bucks complete credit for, KD's foot is on the line, blah, blah, blah. They win that series so narrowly, but that's what happened. And if we aren't judging these guys' legacies based off these extremely narrow results, game of inches, then what are we doing? So it's funny because I've actually been the Giannis hater the last couple of years in this friendship. And it really wasn't until this title that I had to just throw in the towel and admit how great the dude is. The bottom line is, like, during that Nets series and going into this past season, we thought KD was the best player in the world. And so even with half a series of Kyrie and a hobbled James Harden, Giannis carried his team against the best player in the world at the time. KD was better than Giannis in that series, but we aren't litigating individual legacies. These are teams,
and it wasn't like a canyon between them. There were
and then so I thought that the Brooklyn win compensated for a really lackluster opponent, Eastern Conference Finals opponent in the Hawks. And I am pretty high on last year's Suns team. They wilted a little bit in the finals, but that was prime Chris Paul. That was Devin Booker's arrival, and that was a deep, well-coached team. Ayton's stock was much higher a year ago than it is today. And I picked the Suns going into that series. I think I picked the Suns before the playoffs to win it all. So I thought very highly of that Phoenix team. And funnily enough, after doubting Giannis for years, his title has aged very well for me. So I had that one at 4. You had it at 5, but we're pretty close there.
Just as a side note, it's really unfortunate that we haven't gotten a Giannis Embiid series yet in the playoffs. I really would have liked it to happen either this year. Well, it couldn't have happened this year because they both lost in the second round. But last year, obviously, it was the time, and the Sixers just completely wilted. But anyways, to the next.
Yep. And also something that we've neglected to refer back to as well is 0 ring chaser tax really for the Bucks team. I guess they made the Drew Holiday trade, but he was the third best player on that team, maybe the second. If his defense was incredible. Chris Middleton made so many huge shots for that team during their run as well. But that was a homegrown core. And they had, like you said, sort of a median strength of schedule, median degree of difficulty. That combined with no ring chaser tax has them in the top half of my rankings here.
Nice 15-pounder.
Yep. Okay. Is your number 4 the bubble Lakers?
It is not.
Wow. Okay. Max loves the bubble.
I'm ready to argue vociferously for the 2020 Lakers, but do you want me to do it now or when we get to them on my list?
Okay. Well, who did you have it for?
It was close. I'll be honest. I went back and forth a lot.
I'm getting ready to get upset.
I had the 15 Warriors at 4.
The 15 Warriors at 4. Okay. Yeah. I think this is, and I think that's super fair. I had them at 3, and I think this is where I let nostalgia get the best of me a little bit. Obviously, this was no love, and Kyrie only played for 1 game in that 2015 finals against the Warriors. So let's just do that one now.
Sure.
I have so much love for this fully homegrown championship team. I think it was an underratedly really tough second round matchup against the grit and grind Grizzlies.
Though the Grizzlies were very banged up, but continue.
They were banged up. It was not the Grizzlies team that that humiliated the Thunder in 2013. Definitely a little bit older, a little less spry, but still a hard second round matchup. And this is when we still have prime Marc Gasol, and nobody wants to play that team in the second round. And then they had early Harden Houston in the conference finals, a series that I think they were favored in. But again, this is an unproven Warriors team. We still have Charles on TNT saying they're soft and this is no way for a championship team to play. Steph has had his moment in MSG where he's shimmying and it's his league for a second. I have so much love and admiration for the system that they built, the way they played, the fact that they were balanced enough as a team that their best player didn't even win finals MVP. Mm-hmm. This was our lowest scoring finals MVP in this whole run of 2014 to 2021. Iguodala averaged 16.3 points in the finals. We don't need to relitigate that. I think that they probably should have given LeBron the Jerry West treatment, given him the finals MVP on the losing team. He didn't get it. LeBron was insane in this series, but he had no help. So, I had them at 3 just because no ring chaser tax, and I thought Grizzlies not so easy. But you know what? I'm looking at it again, feeling like you're probably right.
I can tell you what dinged them for me, and I still think this is a heavy-ish chip. Heavy-ish chip. So in the second round, grit and grind Grizzlies were definitely banged up. Mike Conley was playing with a broken face throughout it and really ran out of gas. Tony Allen, as Chris Vernon likes to point out, did pull his hamstring. But that combined with then the Kyrie, Kevin Love being out, and also Kevin Durant having broken his foot that year when that might have been the Thunder's best chance to win a championship.
Yeah. Was that plantar fasciitis?
No, he broke his foot that year.
That was the year he fully broke it.
Yeah. That was like the 2 surgeries year.
Oh my God.
And like the first taste of Russ getting the ball all the time.
Yeah.
And the Clippers completely self-combusted against the Rockets in the second round. That's the Josh Smith, Corey Brewer year. So I think the Warriors still would have beaten them because they played them the year before and it went 7 with a better Clippers and a worse Warriors team. So I think the Warriors still would have beaten them, but still would have liked to see that series. But you play who you play. But the Kevin Durant injury, I think, and then also the Kevin Love and Kyrie injuries just dings it a little, where I put it below the 2020 Lakers just on the degree of difficulty scale. I think on the meaningfulness scale, it's a more meaningful one than the 2020 Lakers one, but we're just doing this weight based on net degree of difficulty minus ring chaser tax. So I put Warriors at 4 and 2020 Lakers at 3, and I'm happy to start arguing for that now.
Yeah, just one more argument for 2015 Warriors weight is they did it in a new way. They were playing a new style. They were dominating defensively, playing small ball, obviously using Bogut and Ezeli when needed, but really when it got down to it, Draymond was their 5, and they created a new type of title team. I think the fact that they did it in such a novel, endearing way that opened up, I think, a lot of franchises' minds about the ways that you can build a team amid a run of super team years. I think it was just so magical that I got a little carried away with those aspects of this team's title.
I fully expected to have them top 3 going in, but then I really started thinking about the Lakers and some of the revisionist history that gets done on the Lakers winning the championship in the bubble really annoys me. First of all, when the season shut down,
let's get into it.
When the season shut down in March of 2020, the Lakers had just gone on a run of beating the other 2 chief title contenders at the time, the Bucks and the Clippers, in the span of like a week, both in pretty dominant fashion. And I remember a certain podcaster went on his podcast and said that the Lakers were clearly the team to beat in the NBA. But somehow when the season shut down, we forgot about all that and they just won because it was the bubble and LeBron and AD were rested and didn't have time to get hurt, basically, which I think is ridiculous. And because it was the bubble, it's also probably the healthiest playoffs that we've had since certainly on this list. And since as far as I can remember, like there are no injury asterisks, like, I don't know, Kawhi got hurt or KD was out. Well, KD was out, but that's because he got hurt in the previous finals. But of the teams that were in the playoffs, everyone was healthy. A lot of the series going into it, people thought the Lakers might struggle. Like they thought Charles Barkley had the brooms out for the Trailblazers 8-1 upset. Sorry to bring that up for you. Although I don't think you had much hope
all
that
my
year.
Blazers group chats were laughing at Charles. I mean, we thought
Yeah.
6 if we were lucky.
Zach Lowe thought or picked the Rockets to beat the Lakers in the second round that year. The Rockets seemed like they'd figured out this new way to play basketball with no center. They won game 1, and then the Lakers just dispensed with them. And, in a perfect world, we would have gotten the LA showdown in the conference finals, and we would have gotten to see the Lakers play the Bucks in the finals. But both those teams kind of, for various reasons, the Bucks, not exactly sure, but the Heat just sort of mentally pushed them around. And Giannis got hurt, but the series was decided by the time Giannis got hurt. They were down 3-0 already.
Yeah. And they absolutely, like you said, they lose game 1 against the Blazers. People start geeking out. Is Dame about to shoot LeBron out of the playoffs? They come back, dominate. They lose game 1 against Houston. Is LeBron done? Does this league belong to other younger guys now? They win 4 straight. Just embarrass the Rockets.
Yes.
And that was another year of like, why does James Harden not look like he cares that much that his team is getting absolutely nut kicked out of the playoffs? And I feel like sometimes we can be harsh on teams that make their opponent look so bad.
Yes.
That Rockets team was really talented. That was a Rockets team with a lot of winning experience. And also the Denver conference finals, that was a series the Lakers had to win, but also an incredibly talented, young, fearless Denver team. My one question would be, is it LeBron and AD hate? Or is it just whoever was gonna win that bubble title was gonna be facing some of this questioning?
Probably the latter. But I do think, I think
you're saying that it's misguided.
I'm saying it's misguided, and I know a lot of NBA writers picked the Clippers to win that year.
I'm one of them.
Yeah,
I'm an NBA writer.
Yeah. I'm not an NBA writer, but my head picked Clippers, my heart picked Lakers. And it would have been really nice to see those teams play each other. But Lakers could only play who were in front of them. And going into the playoffs, like people thought Lakers, Bucks, Clippers are all really good finals worthy teams, championship worthy teams. And the Rockets were looming as like a sort of wild card if they got hot. So it was not an easy degree of difficulty by any means. And just because they made it look easy, that shouldn't take away from what they did.
Yeah. Also, we didn't have packed stadiums. Obviously, it was like friends and family in the bubble at a certain point. But it was also a damn cultural oasis after like weeks and months of fear and COVID chaos. The whole world was watching the bubble playoffs. There was a ton of pressure. A lot of eyes on the NBA. It wasn't like some sort of summer league playoff run. So I'm with you there. At this, the reason I had them at 5, and I guess you said you had them at 3. I had them at 5 because it would have been a huge disappointment if the Lakers lost any single one of these series. The Lakers lose to Jimmy Butler's bubble Heat, and it's an incredible missed opportunity for LeBron and Anthony Davis. And really an unacceptable defeat for Laker Nation. So, but part of, and I guess what I'm implying there is that they get a little bit of that ring chaser tax. They did mortgage a lot of their future and a lot of fairly valuable assets to get Anthony Davis. And obviously the goal was to get him there and win a title quickly, and they pulled it off. And it sounds like you have buoyed them less with that ring chaser tax that I am holding them more accountable for.
Yeah, I'd say so. Because they gave up a lot. Like it was a pretty even trade for both sides at the time.
Yes. And also, like, we can't start hating on a team for wanting to maximize its window with LeBron, especially in his mid-30s when, it's win now or never. Okay. My number 2. I hope it's your number 2.
God, I wanted to put it 1.
2016 Cleveland Cavaliers.
Oh, you have it too.
I have it at 2.
Oh, you did what I could not. I really wanted to put the Spurs at 1, but I just couldn't quite get there. But
okay,
yeah.
So let's just
go. These are the two heaviest by far.
Even though we only want to talk about the finals, there were 3 series before the finals in 2016. All right. The Cavs beat Detroit. Who cares? Atlanta, sort of who cares? That was a fun, feisty team with Millsap, Horford.
That was the 60-win team, right?
No, it was a 48-win team.
Oh, okay.
In the second round. But the closest to 60-win team they played was Toronto. That was kind of like peak DeRozan and Lowry, 56 wins in 2016.
Yeah, they didn't pose a threat.
Yes. And the Cavs went up 2-0. Actually, the Raptors won 2 in a row, 2-2 series. And then LeBron said, okay, this is over. And they won in 6. So 2-2-2. And then we get to the series to remember, the 2016 finals. The reason I didn't have this trophy at number 1 weight, LeBron had Kevin Love and Kyrie.
Yeah.
In this series, he had talent. LeBron has done a lot more with a lot less than he had on his Cavs team, with Tristan Thompson on the offensive boards, sort of neutered Kevin Love and Chris Bosh, post LeBron syndrome. And then obviously Kyrie hit one of the biggest shots in finals history.
Yeah.
And so just because LeBron had enough help, it wasn't completely miraculous, but it sure felt miraculous at the time. So I have them at number 2. He dramatically altered the course of NBA history. The Warriors obviously coming off the 2015 title don't get to repeat. Take it from here before I ramble.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think that beating the 73-win Warriors just puts you on top. I don't care that Draymond got goaded into punching him in the nuts. Just stop committing flagrant fouls. If you hadn't kicked Steven Adams in the nuts 3 times in the previous series, you wouldn't have all those flagrant points where you get suspended for punching LeBron in the nuts in the finals, or grazing the bottom of his shorts, maybe. But honestly, my thing with 2016 and why I think it's so impressive in sort of a big picture view is the top 4 teams that year were so good. And to be the last one standing of those 4 teams, I think is a really great accomplishment. So you had the Cavs and the Warriors, obviously.
Gauntlet.
Then you had the Thunder, who very easily could have made the finals if Klay didn't go nuclear in Game 6.
Klay Thompson, who, by the way, led the 2016 playoffs in points.
Wow. I didn't know
582 points in the 2016.
Oh, that's because Steph missed like the first round and a half.
Yeah, we also had a little Game 6 Klay. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah. And the Warriors played long series as well.
A lot of games.
And then the 4th team, the forgotten team in history, the 16 Spurs, who went 40-1 at home. They lost their last home game of the season. They had a chance to go 41-0. And I remember it was crazy because the Warriors were on track to winning the most games ever in a regular season. And it was like suspense over whether they'd get the 1 seed or not for a lot of the season, because the Spurs were keeping pace with them. I don't remember how many games they ended up winning. It was like 68 or something like that. But that was a really great team that somewhat lost to history because they lost. They just kind of got overwhelmed by the physicality of the Thunder in the second round. 2017 Spurs, also a great team that was lost to history. Kind of that whole post-championship era, and we'll talk more about the 14 Spurs once we get to your number 1 and number 1 in my heart. But I think emerging as the victor out of that top 4 is extremely impressive, even if the Eastern path was very easy. And the Warriors had to make it through the gauntlet of those 3 teams in the West. But I get why you'd want to put the 2014 Spurs at number 1, because they're like the most beautiful team of all time.
Yeah. The extension of the dynasty. So I have the 2014 Spurs at number 1. They were the 1 seed in the West. They got the Mavs in round 1, which they needed 7 games for. It's not fun to play any version of Dirk and Carlisle's Mavs.
Mhm.
Second round, they get baby Dame and prime LaMarcus Aldridge. Blazers, 5 games, pretty easy to handle. And now we get to the Western Conference Finals when they take on a really hungry Thunder team. And this is like Harden has just left. They make the finals in 2012. And then 2013, with no Westbrook, they lose in the second round, even as the 1 seed, to the 5 seed grit and grind Grizzlies. So the Thunder are back in 2014 thinking we need to win now. We got baptized by the Heat 2 years ago. Now we're ready to win. And the old man San Antonio Spurs with a very young Kawhi Leonard stymie them in 6 games.
Yep.
And that series was really a fun clash of styles.
Yep.
Actually, I was looking in that Western Conference Finals, the Spurs had 6 guys average double figures. Obviously, Duncan, Manu, Diaw, Tony Parker, Danny Green, and baby Kawhi, who was the lowest double figure scorer. Tim Duncan was 38 years old. He averaged 17.8 points per game against the Thunder. Kawhi led the Spurs in minutes, but he's still incredibly raw offensively. I was watching highlights. He just doesn't have much in his offensive repertoire. He averaged 11.8, 5.5, and 2.5 assists on 41% field goals, 26% from 3. The Spurs hit 50% more threes than the Thunder, which was only 63s over the course of the series. And it was just an incredible reestablishment of dominance from one of the more aesthetically pleasing teams we've ever had.
Yeah, absolute return to glory for the Spurs and redemption from maybe the worst finals loss ever in 2013. So after making it through that Thunder team, even with a slightly compromised Ibaka, but still, and I think Kawhi had like just an incredible clutch defensive block on Westbrook in one of the games that year. It was a masterful performance. And then they get to the finals against a team that took them to 7 the year before and won, and maybe the most painful finals loss of all time with the Ray Allen shot in game 6 and the yellow ropes around the court. Very famous in everyone's mind.
Heat fans leaving the building.
Yeah, and there's 2 competitive games at the beginning of the series, and then they absolutely buzzsaw them. It's the largest margin of victory ever in a finals, I'm pretty sure. And they made the Heatles, which was like this vaunted super team, look like a team that would be a second round exit in some years. Like they had absolutely no idea what to do with them. They played just this dizzying brand of, the Suns talk about 0.5 basketball, where you catch it and in half a second you make a decision whether you're going to pass, dribble, or shoot. This was like 0.1, 0.2 basketball, like just that ramped up to 100, taking every shot where they had an inch of daylight, passes just whipping around the court. To this day, I will still go back and watch the YouTube video, like the beautiful game 2014 Spurs, which is like just an 11-minute compilation of these guys just whipping the ball around for an open 3, basically throwing behind the back passes, and Manu Ginobili just dunking on Chris Bosh. Which I remember in the time Manu tried to dunk on him, I think either that same year or the previous year, and missed. And then like game 5, he finally got it. And it was like a really cathartic moment. And just the redemption after that 2013 loss, the just kind of playing the apex of basketball.
They literally convinced LeBron that his window in Miami had closed. Kevin Durant led the 2014 playoffs in points, even though he didn't make the finals, which I thought was pretty interesting.
That's hilarious.
Obviously the Spurs were doing it by committee. But yeah, to beat a team in 5 with one of the 2 best players ever coming off of 2 titles was completely ridiculous. And I love seeing you emotional when you talk about Manu. I know how much he matters to you. And so I had them at number 1 simply because 0 ring chaser tax. I think Thunder to Heat was about as hard as it can get from a conference finals to finals. And again, I mean, also the fact that they went 7 in round 1, somehow the Mavs gave the Spurs way more trouble than LeBron's Heat did.
Yeah. And the mental degree of difficulty as well, coming back from the previous year.
Yeah. So that's my number 1. They're your number 2. You had the 2016 Cleveland Cavaliers at number 1. Which leads us to now. 2022,
Yep.
2-1. The Boston Celtics are leading going into game 4 in Boston. And before we close, I just wanted to ask you, like, obviously, assuming that Steph, Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Draymond, none of these really key guys gets hurt, where do you think that this 2022 title is going to fit into our trophy case in terms of weight, size, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, I would call it medium light. I think I would put it on my list between the Bucks from last year and the Raptors from 2019. So under that, decidedly under like the 2015 Warriors for me, but kind of like a little below the median basically of championship weight. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think we were talking about this before we started recording, but I really felt like the closest thing we've had to a final series this year was that Celtics Bucks round 2.
Yeah.
And the fact that they escaped that series against Giannis, who I believe is the best player in the league right now, even without Middleton, I was incredibly impressed by the Celtics mental fortitude, what it took to knock off the best player in the league in Giannis.
And I think like strength of schedule, degree of difficulty wise, if you're going from the Warriors side, they faced Memphis, but Ja got hurt like halfway through it. They faced a very compromised Nuggets team. Phoenix, who was probably their chief rival, kind of self-combusted. So we never really got to see that series, although that's not the Warriors' fault. And then from the Boston perspective, they got the Nets in the first round. That was a very dominant performance, but then they went 7 against the Bucks team with no Middleton. I don't think anyone really expected that series to go 7. And then also 7 against a very banged up Miami Heat team. So basically I came away from this exercise. That's just like, I think strength of schedule, degree of difficulty wise, it's like medium light. But when we talk about like how meaningful this championship will be, I kind of came away feeling like it's one of the less meaningful championships we've had in a little while. Not to bum our listener base out, but
yeah,
I just kind of feel like, I didn't pick, I don't think anyone thought either of these teams was like a finals worthy team going into the year. Like maybe the Warriors, if everything hit right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'd pick either of them to make the finals next year, assuming that everyone's healthy. So they're both very good teams. Whoever wins is going to be a worthy champion. But I guess it is leaving me a little cold.
I agree. I think that I would have them pretty close to the Raptors. I'd have this year's champion close to the Raptors, probably in my third lowest slot above the 2 KD finals MVPs. We haven't had a close game yet, and we're kind of bouncing between blowouts, which makes it feel like neither team is particularly special.
Yeah. And conversely, if the Warriors win, I think it would probably be the most impressive individual accomplishment of Steph Curry's career, just because I think this is the most flawed finals team that he's been on during this Warriors run. It's obviously people might draw comparisons to like the 2014 championship for the Spurs and sort of extending the dynasty, but it doesn't mean nearly the same without sort of like the mental. I mean, they had their own mental trauma with going through sort of the 3 years in the desert following the 2019 finals. Yeah. But so it'll have sort of some of that like redemption sweetness, but I mean, it doesn't hold a candle, I think, to just the way the Spurs lost that finals in 2013 and then coming back the next year. So
yeah, it does seem to fall sort of into the 2019 Toronto weird year, a team we didn't quite expect that still has a lot of talent, and the title will still tell us a lot about the guys involved. Obviously, Tatum has completely elevated his status. Steph has affirmed that he is still in his prime and that the Warriors window is longer than we had probably expected. But yes, I wouldn't put this on the same tier as like Giannis 2021.
Yeah. And yeah, talking about windows and sort of having said what I said about I wouldn't pick either team to make the finals next year. I think both teams should feel a fire under their ass, like even more so than usual, to try to win this year, because I think this is really both of their best shots to win it for the foreseeable future. If we're talking about who is more likely to make it back next year, I might say the Warriors just because they have a chance to be better next year if Clay gets like a whole off season and kind of regain some of his like, routine and put some more strength on. He looks a little skinny.
Maybe they flip Wiseman for someone. Kuminga
Yeah,
takes a step.
they get something.
Moody's a serviceable 3-and-D role guy.
Exactly. Whereas the Celtics, I think, are kind of going to be the same team next year. And they're going to run into Giannis again. Who knows what's going to happen with Philly? Who knows what's going to happen with Brooklyn? Like, there's a lot of star power in the East that they could run into. Yeah, so I think both of these teams are in sort of, they've got to win now, because I think next year, I mean, the Clippers are coming, the Bucks are coming. If Brooklyn can, figure out how to not be a shit show, they're coming.
Yeah, I don't even, when you start your sentence, I think they need to win now. I don't even think you need to qualify it.
Yeah.
Teams in the NBA need to win now because windows close. The league is so jam packed, and when you can fight your way into the finals and you get there, you gotta close it out, because chances are, if you're there, it's the best chance you'll ever have.
Ask Phoenix.